Welcome to Board Game Breakfast. This is it. This is the last week before Gen Con. Now, some of you are probably saying, when are they going to stop talking about Gen Con? But because Gen Con is the biggest United States convention of the year, it really is that important. There are that many games that are coming out from Gen Con, and we're going to be talking about a lot of those games this week and even reviewing a couple of those games this week. So there's that. If you missed our top 10 expansions, we did that last week. You can check out our top 10 list there. If you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, you already know mine, but Sam and Z also included there, so that's on our channel. Anyhow, lots of things to talk about, but let's start with the news first of all. Okay, first up, Fantasy Flight announced another monster pack for Descent. Yeah, okay, that's not really that big of news. So, more importantly, they announced the game Mafia Vendetta. Now, this is, as far as I can tell, their version of Mafia, or Werewolf, whichever, game you type play. And this is a little odd for me because Fantasy Flight has done party-style games before, but to do one here that's already somewhat of a public domain game and has been done to death by so many other companies, that's interesting to me. Is this going to have legs? I mean, it's the Mafia theme rather than the Werewolf, but isn't that market kind of saturated as it is? I guess Fantasy Flight will find out here. Rio Grande is going to be reprinting Cafe International, which has gotten awards and a lot of acclaim, but honestly, I don't think it's that spectacular of a game. I don't think there was any demand for it to be reprinted, but hey, if it was, and you're one of those people, here it is. Essentially, you're going to be moving people around in this cafe, trying to get people of the same nationality sitting together, I think. Flick 'em Up has an expansion. Yeah! Look at this. Look at this picture. There are jumps. There are horses. I'm very excited about this. I really like Flick 'em Up, and I'm glad there's more of that coming. And then if you're wealthy and you're rich, a deluxe edition of War of the Ring will go up for pre-order, well, today. I think the pre-orders are only open for 48 hours, so do it now. $369 gets you a nice deluxe version with painted miniatures. And you say, wait, wasn't there already a deluxe version of War of the Ring? You're right, but that one was from Nexus. This Nexus went out of business. Ares Game has it now. They're making one, and theirs is of the second edition, while the other one was of the first edition. Do you need both editions worth? Probably not. And yet I know at least two people who are planning to buy the second one because it's slightly different than the first deluxe one. And to that, my mind just explodes. I can't even imagine. But be that as it may, maybe you want a nice, really deluxe painted miniature set of War of the Ring. That's your chance. Check out Ares' website.
Okay, so the last 4 weeks we did a deep dive on the GNS theory. You're all probably sick of hearing about it, but I wanted to go back a little bit before then when I did my reading from Blood Meridian. Now, that segment did not go over particularly well. I know that YouTube user Ted the Noob, or Cannon Fodder Ted, pointed out that he, quote, disliked this segment and that it was boring. But by contrast, Dice Tower fan The Crow's Nose noted that this show needed more literature. But I think he might have been sarcastic about it. So to Ted and The Crow's Nose and all of you out there, I just wanted to give a little bit of context. So the passage of that book is about two different themes. It's about war and it's about games. And the main character there, the judge, what he does is he says that in war, there is only one rule, which is the strong survive. But in games, mankind creates its own rules, and both sides agree to that before starting. So while I talked about how well chess simulates a medieval world, it kind of doesn't, because I don't think there was ever a battle in history where the two kings got together ahead of time and agreed, okay, let's only bring 16 warriors, and oh yeah, let's bring our wife too. Even in simulating Star Wars, at no point in the Galactic Rebellion did the Empire and the Alliance ever sit down and say, okay, let's all have a fight where there's only 100 points worth of a squad on each side. Well, maybe they did somewhere in the expanded universe, but I'm not sure. Okay, so then in that passage from Blood Meridian, what happens is the judge says the ultimate game is when two men sit down to a game of cards and they play for the stakes of each other's life. That is, they're recreating the consequences of war, which is death, But again, they're doing it on their own terms. They've created their own world. So fortunately, most of us live in a world where war is not a reality. So next week, we'll talk about how these principles apply to normal everyday life, and we'll wrap up this huge Whitleypedia Omni-series.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Basso.
Jason Levine.
And today we have a question from Brian, and Brian says, I've recently started the board game hobby and my collection grows every month, like everybody's. I'm at the point now where I'm buying expansions. With your vast collection of games, well, Jason's is bigger than mine, do you combine the original game and the expansions in one box? All expansions are just some. And if only some of them, then why?
You're going to get two different answers here. I'm a collector, so I save all my expansion boxes because I like all the boxes. So my Dominion is in, 9 or 10 boxes now. I have every Dominion and I have them all stacked together so you see the whole set of Dominion
But doesn't that
boxes.
bother you, like, to do randomization between them? You got to pull deck from here, deck from there?
No, not at all. I mean, because I feel like the boxes is part of the game. Like if how they have ding and dents and other things. To me, if I ever got a ding and dent, I would be upset because to me the box and having it on your shelf is part of what you're collecting. I know you're the opposite. So.
Now that you've heard the crazy answer, let's give the real life answer. Space is limited for most people, and really it's best to keep the expansion in the box. Now, sometimes in the box itself, I will keep the expansion in a separate bag or something because I don't use it all the time. But most of the time with my expansions, the ones I keep are the best, so I usually integrate them in the game, and I wouldn't want to have to pull out an extra box. I did it sometimes. I used to do it for Settlers of Catan, where I had 4 boxes, and it got so frustrating. I'd rather just have it all one box. It conserves space, and I usually keep the expansion boxes as better quality. The box is not part of the game. You don't ever use the box when you're playing a game unless it's one of those games built around the box.
Lords of Waterdeep is a perfect example where you shouldn't combine it.
No, I've even combined Lords of Waterdeep. In fact, I combined Lords of Waterdeep and the expansion both in the expansion box with a custom thing. So,
I would never.
But what if you were short on room? What if you're living in New York in an apartment somewhere?
Then I would get a storage unit to put it in. I would
Once again,
not.
the crazy answer.
Well, because the reason you buy a box, as you can see from all these boxes here, you have artwork on the box. It's part of it. You have a little explanation of the game on the back or explanation of the expansion. And to me, it's part of what you're collecting.
Well, what if the expansion doesn't come in a box? It's like in a bag, like Revolution or
things
Suburbia.
Like that. Here's what I do for that. Let's use X-Wing for an example.
Yes.
I clip out all of the plastic pieces, the plastic bubble case or whatever you call it, but then every single piece of paper, like the little Star Wars X-Wing, all those little pieces of paper, I stack them all and I have a little folder with every single one of those papers that came with all those bubble things. Yes, I do. When we go through my collection,
I'm staring in the face of insanity.
I keep all, because to me, it's like, you want all that. First of all, the X-Wing, one part says what the name of the ship is, the other part has the little maneuver chart where you don't need to use the little dial, so it's worth keeping.
Well, no, you can keep that. All right, anyhow, what do you guys think? Tell us in the comments. Do you keep expansion boxes? Do you keep them both? Maybe you get rid of all of them. Just keep all your stuff in a bag. Actually, I knew someone who did that. But anyhow, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
Jason Levine.
Send us emails at dicetower@gmail.com.
Hi, Suzanne here, and I wanted to talk to you about something that's been on my mind. So today we're going to start what I think will be a 3-part series discussing app pricing and value. Now, I've thought about this topic a lot, but it rose to the top of my mind recently with the release of the Splendor app. As some of you may know, I'm really active on social media, especially on Twitter. And it was fascinating to me to see all of the reactions to the $6.99 price tag Splendor released with, because they were by and large negative. Now let's talk about value quickly to kind of set a baseline for our discussion. Value is highly subjective and personal and can be hard to quantify. But when we're talking about board games, we usually talk about the price that you paid for the game and weigh that against things like the quality and quantity of components, the quality of the gameplay, and even things like the total hours of entertainment or the frequency it hits the table. So the game that you paid $50 for that has great components but that you don't really enjoy playing, probably has a very different return on investment for you than a $50 game that has iffy components but that you just love playing. Apps are similar in that you want to take into consideration things like the quality of the gameplay and the total hours of entertainment you get out of that app. But they're unique in that you should probably consider things like the quality of the port or the development effort. And I also think about things like the feature set. Does it have an AI? Does it have multiple AIs? Is there a tutorial? Is that tutorial any good? Is there online play? And when you take all of those things into account, sometimes I end up liking an app version more or less than a physical version. And remember, everybody's value calculation is going to be a little bit different. So one person's $7 ripoff can be another person's $7 bargain. And one other thing I'd like you to take into account when you're thinking about an app's value or price, everyone who contributed to the creation of that board game app, from the board game's original designer and artist, to the publisher, to the developer, and even the app store that the game is released on, everyone gets their cut of the dollars that you spend on that app. But that may be a discussion for a different series. So next time we're going to start talking about the two primary pricing structures you see with apps, free to play or premium. See you then.
Okay, so what's coming from the Dice Tower this week? Well, the first thing is that me, Sam, and Z are going to be doing a series of videos this week talking about some of the games that we're going to see at, or that we're looking forward to at Gen Con, and telling you which games we think are going to be exciting and interesting. So there's that. We'll also be doing some reviews. I have Bring Out Your Dead, Champions of Midgard. I'll be taking a look at Thief, the expansion to Tokaido, Nevermore, Two Rooms and a Boom. I got reviews from the other guys. Sam and Z will be doing stuff. We have another board game blender coming out from Z. From the Dice Tower audio podcast this week, we're doing our top 10 Wild Wild West type theme games. And there's more there than I thought, so I hope that will be interesting. That will be posted tomorrow. And we might do a live Q&A this week, although that's going to depend basically on timing, because this week is all about preparation for Gen Con. But we will have all the other stuff up for you. We hope you enjoy it. Watch it and find it all at Dicetower.com.
Hello, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here, continuing my Meeples for Sheepish Peoples series, discussing the social activity of board games in the lives of people who aren't necessarily socially outgoing. Well, last episode found me stopping at Dice Tower Con as a dress rehearsal for Gen Con. I also traveled to Dice Tower Con, not only to meet up with and play games with some friends, but also to find and play games with several others who I'd corresponded with online through social media. However, by midway through the convention, I had let the anxiety of meeting these new people cause me to completely neglect doing so. I could continue hiding comfortably in games with friends, or I could start pushing myself out of my comfort zone and spend time with those who I'd also come there to meet. Well, I decided that win or lose, I had to give it a try. So that's why, first thing the next morning, when the opportunity spontaneously arose to have breakfast with someone that I'd met through Twitter and his entire game group, I did it. And to my amazement, I survived. That evening, I had dinner with the gentleman who won the starring role in the board game Decathlon mockumentary from last year's Jack Vasel Memorial Fund charity auction, and we talked well after the food was finished, and it was a fantastic conversation. I also chatted with another socially anxious gentleman who I had corresponded with by email, and then made time to play games specifically with the online friends that I had come there to get to know better. But the most rewarding experience has to have been when I was approached by a gentleman who was clearly nervous and mentioned that he had watched last year's Meeples for Sheepish People series and had traveled all the way from Asia just to attend the Dice Tower convention. I was even more surprised when I discovered Asia's on the other side of the planet. I looked it up. Realizing the amount of courage that it took for him to travel so far into the unknown just to have the opportunity to meet some of the people that he has seen on the Dice Towers Board Game Breakfast Show really helped put my own anxieties into perspective. So, was pushing myself out of my comfort zone worth it? Well, in this case, absolutely. I mean, sure, yeah. During each of these conversations, I was nervous, but making the social connections that I set out to make was far more rewarding. I felt fantastic. But there can be a side effect to feeling fantastic. And next time, I'll conclude this batch of segments by sharing the nicest insult a socially apprehensive board gamer such as myself can receive. And did receive.
Today we're going to look at some inserts from Go7 Gaming. This is a company that makes different inserts. They make a lot, but I'm going to show you two today. The first is for this wooden artist case. This is from Hobby Lobby. You can get these. They have some wooden artist case. And this one here holds cards. Now, what's interesting about this one here is that the card trays that are made here, and they come with these plastic inserts, are going to hold the cards upright, which is different than most games. Most of these cases hold them facing down like this, and I thought this was interesting. This lets you fit a lot of cards in here, and then there's, I guess, a small area here to put other pieces. I actually don't know if I like this because it's hard to get pieces out of there, honestly. Maybe a mat can go in there. I don't know, something that can go in there, but it also kind of is annoying aesthetically, right? It's like, ooh, that looks so good, and wow, why is that thing over there? So, I mean, maybe you could put some boards. Since this also comes at the very top of the case, when you close this, you got to just kind of push back a little bit to make sure that the whole thing closes properly. And there's also probably not going to be room for rules and stuff. I'm thinking about putting all my Marvel Legendary stuff in one of these because there's a lot of different cards in that game, and they get in here. Anyway, that's the first case. The second is for the game 7 Wonders. So let's take a look at the case inside here. We have the rules and things on top. Now here you can see that inside are a couple cases that have to be pulled out. Now for these particular cases, you have to glue them together. Now some people don't mind that. I personally dislike gluing anything because I'm just not very good at it. But you can see the different pieces come out, and then there's actually 4 of them. They're stacked on top of each other, and so you can have the different points. And this is actually very nice. And in here you have the cards, which, as you can see, these cards, this isn't my game, these cards are sleeved. Over here on the side, there's a spot to put all the different wonders, and underneath that, the stuff from the newest expansion, Tower Babel. So everything from all the expansions thus far fits in here, and it's actually a pretty hefty game. This is honestly, at this point in time, the best insert for 7 Wonders that I've seen, if only because it fits all the expansions very nice. I'm sure the other companies will be doing something similar to that. But that's the expansion for 7 Wonders. This all, again, comes from Go7 Gaming.
不耐听。
这游戏蛮简单的，一开始呢，你总共要做3种事情：先把今天的案件给处理一下，之后再摔骰子。再来呢，我们就开始玩家的回合。然后玩家总共可以做12种事情。第一个 ，No， 这游戏听起来太难了。
Start a new segment here on the Board Game Breakfast, and that's for those who don't have time to watch all my reviews, because really, who does? And this is just going to be a quick rundown of the reviews I did in the previous week, and I'll also mention if any of those games got added into my collection, and if so, what games were replaced by them and why. Again, I always urge you not to read too much into any of that, but no one's going to listen to me, so here we go. So this past week, the games that I did not like Dungeon of Fortune that much. It was okay. Kind of card push your luck game from Tasty Minstrel. There was a rules missing from the book, but beyond that, wasn't very exciting. Then there was a Bottle Cap Vikings, which I just thought was kind of a dreadful little bore of a game, very boring, also from Tasty Minstrel. And then 20th Century Limited, which I wanted to like, and the game actually isn't that bad, just very fiddly and very technically difficult to play. Though games that I did like, I liked Comex, which is a fun party game, which I thought was one of the best storytelling and genre party games that's been out so far. Holly and me both liked the Laser Maze Jr., which was kind of a puzzle from Think Fun, where you're trying to get lasers to move around and hit a specific object. And I also really liked Flip City from Tasty Mincer Games, and I liked that enough to add it to my collection, and I actually did not get rid of a game because it was a card game, and I throw those in here. And card games I don't necessarily replace right away, but I usually put them in there, and every once in a while I'll be like, oh, this is full, and I'll pull a few card games out and get rid of them. Amon Ray, I did a review of that, but that already was in my collection, and I will be keeping that until some company decides to reprint it. Dark Tales, I enjoyed that game. It was kind of a fun back and forth play cards. I thought it was best with 2 players, where you would play cards and sometimes you could do different combos. I liked it a lot, but Z has that in his collection. Then Mogul, a small auction game from Rio Grande. I very much enjoyed that, and I'm definitely keeping that in my collection, and it replaced, well, Mogul, because I already had the small card game version. This was a slightly bigger board game version. Almost the same game. Great game. Empire's Age of Discovery, same thing. I went over the deluxe version. Not sure it's worth the high price for the game, but I mean, there is tons of stuff in it, lots of great components, and it is a fantastic, fabulous worker placement game, and that replaced Age of Empires 3, and they're essentially the same game. So nothing majorly new, but some replacements made. And will something be added to my collection this week? Definitely. Come back next week to find out what it is.
Admiral, the Trade Federation will be expanding into the Orion cluster whether you approve or not.
The Star Empire will not tolerate any excursions into the cluster, and we will use all resources at our disposal to stop you and your Federation.
Do what you must, Rasmussen, but rest assured, our partnership with the machines is nothing to sneeze at.
Oh, we have some alliances ourselves, and I must say one of the most ruthless, cunning captains is spearheading our operations. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Oh, I'm afraid. Tora's out.
Two can play at that game. Oh, a block fighter.
They appear like guppies.
I shall play a battle pod with my mercenary blobs, and I will play a blob destroyer. I think your superiors will not be very happy with you.
Director 060, what are you doing? How long are you going to allow our interest in this sector to take this much damage?
But ma'am.
Don't ma'am me.
Excuse me. CEO Tora, our interests in this sector have advanced significantly. However, our Imperial rivals have aligned themselves with the dreaded Blob menace. This has resulted in a much higher casualty rate than was previously expected. How do you deceive an enemy who eats your covert operatives?
For the Empire! Oh, victory!
Welcome to Building Blocks with the Dukes of Dice.
Let's say you want to teach a non-gamer Dead of Winter, a meta-cooperative game where most players are working to achieve a shared goal, along with secret individual goals. But among them, there could be a hidden traitor who is seeking to undermine the group objective. This hidden team mechanic creates suspicion, paranoia, and a lot of finger-pointing.
Before you have a new gamer invest in a 2-hour or more game steeped in tension and distrust, you might want to introduce them to a shorter experience that strips away the more complex mechanics of a game like Dead of Winter or Battlestar Galactica and distills the hidden team experience to its very essence. In order to ease a player into the tension and skill sets needed for hidden team games, we recommend games like One Night Ultimate Werewolf, Saboteur, but most importantly, the original Resistance or Resistance Avalon. In the Resistance, the majority of players are Resistance members and the minority are spies for the totalitarian government. After teams are secretly assigned, the spies will secretly reveal themselves to one another during an eyes-closed period. The goal is for each team to accomplish 3 of 5 missions, rotating participating leaders will place a variable number of players on a mission, and the group will vote for or against the team. Once that team's approved by the majority, they'll go on the mission. Resistance members on the mission will secretly play a success card, while spies on the mission will secretly play their choice of a success or fail card. Those played cards are shuffled, so no one knows who played what. No fails, and the Resistance gets the point. At least one fail, and the spies get the point.
The Resistance is a ton of fun, allowing Resistance members to make educated deductions with imperfect information and allowing spies to sow distrust and discord among the entire group.
Dead of Winter is chock full of those same feelings of dread and distrust, but with a whole lot more mechanics and game built on top. Before a new player invests a lot of time in a more complicated game like Dead of Winter, find out if they like the hidden team experience first.
Last week, there was some fuss over the new version of Warhammer from Games Workshop. And the fuss was so great that one guy decided to burn his previous collection in some sort of protest that means nothing, but sure got him a lot of views on YouTube. So, why do people not like it? Well, for one thing, people don't like change, right? But then again, there's lists of changes. And I'm not here to debate whether the new version is better than the old version. I don't know. But the new version has what I call silly rules in it. And silly rules are games that tell you to do something silly involved in them. For example, in this one of the guys will get a benefit as long as you're consistently looking your opponent in the eyes. Others will give you benefits if you shout something as you do them. There's all sorts of units that if you do some silly thing that's usually outside the game, you'll get bonuses for them. And a lot of people are really annoyed about that. Some people are ignoring that, and others are embracing this. I remember there was a space game, card game, Magnum Blast, or some sort of card game from Fantasy Flight, where you had to make noises when you played a card and shot them at other people, or the shot miss. It was kind of like a silly rule that was added to it. There's the Quelf, which is kind of the king of this, which has all sorts of silliness. Now, you can tell, I should hope by now, that I am a silly sort of person, or at least to some degree. I like to wear funny hats. I like to do silly things. I'm all for being silly when I want to. And that's kind of where I am with board games. I like board games that allow me to be silly. If we're playing Shadows over Camelot and we decide to break out into silliness and, do a lot of Monty Python quotes, that's fine. We're doing that silliness. But Quelf annoys me because Quelf's like, wear a pot on your head. Why? Because. And I don't know that I like that forced silliness. Now, sometimes that forced silliness is something I do enjoy, like, for example, Dungeon Fighter. Dungeon Fighter is a game where you roll dice and try to hit a target in the middle of the table, and you're rolling them underneath your arm, between your legs, and around your back, and the game makes you do that. But there, I don't mind the silliness because it actually adds some kind of weird, cool thing to the game. So maybe I'm being completely random about where I like my silliness, and I think that's there, but I think there is kind of a hard line that when a game says, you will be silly, I don't know that I like that as much as a party game, maybe Time's Up or What's Wagers. With those games, the silly stuff just happens. You ever play a game of Time's Up, and it becomes silly. It becomes hilarious as people are playing it, and I think that's where the fun and the entertainment of that game comes from, as opposed to just this straight up, hey, walk like a soldier, walk backwards. Just that kind of odd stuff that a game tells you to do. And I guess I can get into that, but I'm just not so sure that I like the game dictating how funny or fun I'm supposed to be. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you not mind that? A game says be silly, the Age of Sigmar stuff. Are you going to, if there was a game like that? Let me give you a scenario, and I'd like to see what you guys would do in the comments. Let's say we're playing a popular game. We'll say Ticket to Ride. And in Ticket to Ride, when you finish a route that is 5 or 6 trains, if you go choo-choo really loud, then you will get an extra point. Now, when you play the game, will you play that people have to do that? Or will you allow people to just take that extra point, just add the extra point in and not make the people go choo-choo? Or will you just allow people to do it like choo-choo? Where do you lie on that? Where would you lie on that spectrum? I'm just curious to see kind of where people are on there, because obviously some people do it. The success of Quelf proves that, and obviously many people don't, because most games don't enforce that sort of silly behavior. I don't know. Again, I don't got a lot of room to talk here, but it's just something I thought was interesting.
Hi there, Mikhail here for Snakes and Lattes with another installment of the Improv Gamer, the segment where we show you to have a lot of fun with a little on hand. So today on the Improv Gamer, we're going to be talking about Love Letter. It's already pretty portable, but if you don't happen to have your pouch on hand, you can easily replicate the game with a standard deck of playing cards. Love Letter is a game for 2 to 4 players. In Love Letter, players are dealt 1 card each. Another card is then removed from the game face down. On each player's turn, they draw 1 card and then play one of the 2 cards in his or her hand. The most common role is the guard, which will allow a player to accuse another player of being another role, not the guard. If they guess correctly, the other player is knocked out of the round. The priest will allow a player to look at another person's hand. Pretty straightforward. The baron will allow a player to compare their card in hand with another player's held card. Whoever has a higher value will knock the other player out of contention. If there is a tie, then nothing happens. The handmaid will protect a player from being targeted by any other card effect until the beginning of his or her next turn. The prince will allow a player to choose another player, or even themselves. That player must then immediately discard their card and draw another card. The king will allow a player to trade their hands with another player. And the countess. If you have the prince or the king as your other held card in hand, the countess must be played as your card for the turn. Finally, the princess. If the princess leaves a player's hand for any reason, that player is immediately knocked out of the round. If there are players still remaining in the round when there are no cards left to be drawn in the deck, everyone shows their held card. The highest card will win the round. The princess, of course, is the highest card. Seiji Kanai is the Japanese designer of some of the most fun and fast card games on the market right now. Love Letter itself has been reskinned dozens of times, both by fans on the internet and by AEG professionally, including skins like Munchkin Love Letter, Legend of the Five Rings Love Letter, Batman Love Letter, and The Hobbit Love Letter. We at Snakes are wondering, who's your favorite princess? Leave us a comment and let us know. This has been Mikhail for the Improv Gamer. Game on.
Hello, my name is Russ, and I have a problem. It all started a couple months back when my friend said, "Hey, would you like to play this new game that I got?" And I'm like, "Sure, I like games." It was Dice Masters. Give me the good stuff. It was fun. Bag full of dice, and buying and making teams. It was all innocent fun at first, but then it became a craving. I couldn't get through the workday without thinking, how do I get an extra $1 to buy another blister pack so that maybe I can get that skeleton I need to make, the were-rat really effective? Then, that's all I could think about. I wake up in a cold sweat thinking, what's the energy cost for a copper dragon? My wife left me. My kids left me. My wife came back looking for the kids. Is Steve gonna play that epic mind flayer? Is he gonna capture my guys so that I can use them and then I attack against him? Maybe he's gonna throw out a prismatic spray and my army becomes a collection of useless crap. That's when I knew I had to stop, but I can't. You take it from me. You don't play Dice Masters. Dice Masters plays you!
Ma'am, I'm trying to get a were-rat.
Well, folks, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed Board Game Breakfast. Lots of great things coming, like I said, from the Dice Tower this week. And there's so much exciting stuff. We're at the height of the fever pitch of things being announced. I'm sure we'll have stuff coming up next week. But until then, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff, in stock, at CoolStuffInc.com.